Crime and the legal system widen the gap of economic inequality. There should be more outreach programs to younger individuals, either in the form of in-school or after-school programs. Ultimately, these programs will help keep children motivated and out of trouble. As we put more money into these initial support systems and programs, less will be required to be put into the prisons. However, not all after-school programs require money. Some can come in the form of peer mentors, such as an older, well-rounded, good student being paired with a younger student. Our goal is not to get people out of prisons, but to prevent them from getting there in the first place. Ultimately, hoping to eliminate this issue that is the power of economic inequality, which is stunting economic growth. In 1970, the United States prison population started to steadily increase through 2009. The United States currently imprisons 2.2 million individuals, more of its residents than any other country. The United States jails 1/4 of the world's prisoners while only containing 5% of the global population. As U.S. News' Colleen Walsh says, the statistics are sobering for a republic that celebrates justice, fairness, and equality as the granite pillars of its democracy. So what are the reasons of this? Why do people choose to commit crimes? Before we can answer that in full, it is important to understand some of the psychological background of why kids experiment in the first place. The theory of psychosocial development was developed by a neo-Freudian named Erik Erikson. His theory divided development into 8 separate stages, each building off of the other. Within each stage, there is a psychosocial crisis in which the individual will endure. It could lead to a negative or positive result in personality development. Quote, he emphasized the role of culture and society and the conflicts that can take place within the ego itself. Unquote. While each stage is critical, Stage 5 is the most relevant to our analysis. In Stage 5, identity versus role confusion, adolescents begin to experiment as they strive to find identity, their goals, their values, and beliefs. This stage, being essential in the transition from childhood to adulthood, is where most individuals get lost in role confusion. It is the stage in which children will determine the roles they will play as adults. Therefore, if a child is unsuccessful in what they believe is a fair system, but failed due to discrimination, they are more likely to believe that they themselves are the ones at fault. With such an impact, children are more likely to turn to negative activities, like abusing substances, crime, and violence if they do not receive some type of guidance or reassurance. There are many reasons why people turn to crime, but identity versus role confusion explains one reason why someone would experiment with it during this time. Now that we understand the psychological period in which crime begins, it is time to analyze the reasons why crime and inequality are linked.
Daryl Mado wrote, in 1968, San Francisco Chinatown was a ghetto community which has one of the highest suicide rate, highest tuberculosis rate, the most congested housing facilities of any ghetto in America. Not only were housing and schools within the community severely underfunded, residents were also tried unfairly at their local courts. Many Asian Americans thus developed the scarcity mindset and turned to petty crimes as their only way of survival. Another example is the notorious Black Panther Party, a violent civil rights movement that emphasized on militancy and black nationalism. Just like Chinatown, black communities across the nation did not enjoy the physical protection and economic support that many white communities received. Due to the continuous problem of high crime rate and low public education quality, African Americans' income with the white Americans only worsened over time. To counteract racism, the Panthers carried weapons to patrol the police en masse. Sometimes the BPP would just threaten violence. Other times, it would take over streets and buildings to engage in violent shootout with its opponent. The second method was more commonly employed in the late 1970s and early 1980s when the FBI raided the Panthers' headquarters, leading to casualties on both sides. Between 1986 and 1989, the homicide rate for black male aged 14 to 17 more than doubled, and the homicide rate for black male aged 18 to 24 increased nearly as much. During this period, the black communities also experienced 20 to 100% increase in fetal death rate, low birth weight babies, weapon arrests, and the number of children in foster care. In 1996, approximately 60% of inmates incarcerated in the U.S. were sentenced on drug charges. crack and cocaine use and distribution became popular in cities that were in social and economic chaos, such as Los Angeles and Atlanta. As a result of the low skill levels and minimal initial resource outlay required to sell crack, systemic violence flourished as a growing army of young inner-city crack sellers attempt to defend their economic investment. Once the drug became embedded in the particular communities, the economic environment that was best suited for its survival caused further social disintegration within the city. An environment that was based on violence and deceit was an avenue for the crack dealers to protect their economic interest.
Crime is contagious in the sense that it occurs more and more in people that are surrounded by it. In an American society where most jobs are requiring a college diploma, others are disturbed why they make less than their friend with a college degree. The grassroots approach to this is simply where people start in the early stages of their life. Given this, people cannot choose their parents, where they attend school, and how much of an influence their parents have on them. Therefore, their future is determined at a very young age, with significant figures including losing a fatherly figure or lack of support groups inside a community. Children branch off into the world of crime. As research has proven that crime is more prominent in Latino and colored communities, as well as white communities, that is not a blame of race. That is a blame of society's lack of resources. Government budget cuts directly affect a child's early development, and if a parent cannot fulfill in areas of weak education, children are left on their own. The strain theory, founded by Robert Merton, explains how inequality leaves roads for people to trail off to, and not in a positive direction. The strain theory explains the correlation between a person's societal goals and how they plan to achieve them. When this is not fulfilled, people trail off to conformity, innovation, ritualism, retreatism, and rebellion. These are all forms to twist their way to achieving one's goals. In this case, crime is seen as less of a burden on society when people experience the strain theory. For example, conformity is seen as when people contort their views of societal values. In addition, the conflict theory is introduced to this topic of crime and the inequality gap as well. In addition, if people do not have the resources needed to improve their mental health, criminal activity remains constant and results in a habitual cycle. In conclusion, crime feeds into inequality and vice versa. Without supporting a community's needs, crime is followed because inequality starts this process. We do not want to get people out of jail. However, our main goal is to prevent them from entering. Reducing the exposure to inequalities, allowing people to realize their moral reasoning, reduces the chance for people to enter into jail. The economic gap will decrease because by less people going to jail, more of the taxpayers' money will be directed towards other sources such as education. By simply changing the way people think about their societal status and effect on a community could change the way they view their decisions regarding potential criminal moves.
While there is no magic button to solve crime and its effect on inequality, there are steps we can take to stagnate the issue. An increase in outreach programs, if done correctly, would be a start. We can instate more apprenticeship programs that provide career pathways to jobs in government, technology, hospitals, and education. In addition, unions can reach out to urban youths to help find them jobs in construction and other industries. On the other end of things, the justice system and local business owners could be more understanding of young adults with minor criminal records. For outreach programs to successfully catalyze change, however, they must be enacted correctly. Primarily, the outreach workers must be able to connect with the targeted youth. For there to be a level of trust, openness, and engagement, the worker should have a similar background. If the youth, for example, is an active gang member, the worker could be a former member of a gang who has successfully changed their track. Lastly, there should be a clarity of goals and strategies prior to engaging in the program. Instead of attempting to broadly attack all issues at once, there must be a streamlined, step-by-step action plan. NCCD's survey of current outreach programs found that many programs suffer from a lack of well-articulated goals with appropriately linked strategies. Given the high levels of need in communities that house outreach workers, without clear goals and strategies, it can be very tempting for outreach programs to try to address all of the community's needs. If done correctly, outreach programs at a grassroots level could lessen the numbers of youths incarcerated, and therefore help slow the widening gap of wealth in America.